Hey guys, it's Becky, and today I am doing my monthly wrap-up. I read quite a few books in the month of July. I don't think I have ever in my life read this many books in one month. I read 14 and a half books, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started with what I read. The first book I read this month is Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the third and final book in the Grisha trilogy. I thought this book was a fantastic end to the trilogy. It always kept me up on my seat. I never knew what was going to happen. This is one of the very few books that has made me cry this year. I love this book, and I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. Next, I read Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler with art by Maura Kelman. This book follows a girl named Min, and she is writing a letter to her ex-boyfriend explaining why they had to break up. This isn't my favorite book. I think one of the most fascinating things about this book is that before each chapter there was a picture of an item, and then within that chapter Min would explain why that caused them to break up. I have come to realize that I struggle quite a bit with books written in letter format. Prime example of that is Stolen by Lucy Christopher. I did not like the way it was written. Despite that, I did enjoy it overall, and I gave it 3 stars. The next books I read in July were The Raven Boys and The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. These books follow a girl named Blue along with a group known as the Raven Boys. I don't really want to explain what these books are about because I know I'm not going to be able to do it justice. It's really hard to explain. It's kind of complicated, but these books are absolutely fantastic. The characters are absolutely wonderful. I love every single one of them. Maggie Stiefvater is a genius for characters, and I gave both of these books 5 stars as well. After that, I read The Tragedy Paper by Elizabeth Levon. And again, this is told in a little bit of a different format, which I wasn't a huge fan of. This book is told from 2 different perspectives, one from the past and one from the present. The point of view told from the past is told through an audio recording, which in my mind is quite like a letter, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I would have rather just read the story as it was going along. This book follows the events leading up to a tragedy at Irving boarding school, and it follows the lives of 2 males who are affected by this tragedy. I thought this book was okay. It definitely isn't my favorite book in the world. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. After that, the BookTubeathon hit, and I did participate in that. I did read 7 books that week, which I am still blown over by. I'm not going to go into too much detail about these books. I will leave my BookTubeathon wrap-up video down in the description if you want to hear more of my thoughts on these next 7 books. The first ones I read during the BookTubeathon is the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy, which consists of The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer, all by Jenny Han. All I'm going to say about these books is that I really, really enjoyed them. I thought they were great reads, and I gave the first 2 books 4 stars and the last book 4.5 stars. Then I read The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. I never read Percy Jackson before, so I'm excited to get into it. I really enjoyed this first installment. It was a fun adventure book. It was a bit young because Percy is about 12 in this book, which took some getting used to because I'm not used to reading about characters this young, but I did really enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. I read Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. This is a memoir chronicling the life of Maury Schwartz in his last days. I thought this book was very inspirational, and I gave it 5 stars. After that, I read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. It was nothing like what I thought it would be. I didn't really know what I thought it would be going into it, but it was just insane. It was so good. It's one of my new favorite books of this year, and of course I gave it 5 stars. And the last book I read for the BookTubeathon is The Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan, the second book in the Percy Jackson and Olympian series. I think I like this one a little bit more than the second one. Again, it was another fun adventure book, and Percy is a little bit older, which I did enjoy more, and I gave this one 4 stars as well. After the BookTubeathon ended, I did slow down on my reading a little bit, of course. I only have a couple more books to show you, and the first one is Bridge to Haven by Francine Rivers. This book follows a girl named Abra who was left on the ground by herself when she was little. She was then fostered by a family in the town that she was left in, and then that family ended up giving her to another family when she was like 4 or 5 years old. So she spent her whole entire life feeling like she's not wanted, that no one loves her. So the first chance she gets, she runs away. She ends up getting entwined with a bunch of people who are not good for her at all. She steps foot into Hollywood as well, which is very interesting. In short, this is basically a story of a prodigal son, except it's a girl, obviously. She has a brilliant way of making you feel and connect with the characters within a few hundred pages, and I really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 5 stars. The last full book I read this month is The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. This follows a girl named Lenny whose sister has just died unexpectedly, so she is dealing with grief throughout this entire novel. She begins to form a close bond with her sister's boyfriend because they can both live their grief together, which in some ways is reassuring for her. And then as well as a new boy has moved into town named Joe, who knew nothing about her sister. He was not there for the events of her death. It is kind of a fresh start and an escape for her. I really liked this book. It had a lot of romance aspects in it, but it also dealt a lot with family and pain and grief as well. Thought it was written very beautifully. There were quite a few beautiful quotes in this book, and I'm looking forward to reading more by her. And I gave this one 4 stars. Finally, I got through 275 pages of A Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin, the second book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I'm not even going to try to explain this on camera, for one, because it's the second book of a series, and 2, it is just too complicated to condense within a minute. I am really enjoying this book so far. I think I am liking it just a little bit more than the first one, but it is so big. I get such a huge sense of accomplishment every time I finish one of his books. As for the books I intend to read in the month of August, I'm going to keep that pretty short because I don't like being forced into a list. I like to keep what I want to read open, so I'm just going to show a few books, and obviously the first one will be finishing A Clash of Kings. After I finish that, I don't think I'll go to this one right away, but I would like to at least start it sometime this month, and that is Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. I don't know if I'll finish it this month because this book is massive. I'm also currently reading The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I'm about 1/4 of the way through with this, so I'd like to finish this soon as well. And this follows a father and his son, and there's some type of apocalyptic thing going on. I don't know if there's aliens or zombies. It's starting to sound a little bit like cannibals, but hasn't outright said. It's very interesting. I just don't handle zombies very well, so I'm kind of getting a little bit sketched out by this book, but I am still really enjoying it. Next, I would like to read For, a Divergent Collection by Veronica Roth. This is just a collection of 4 short stories told in For's perspective from the divergent world. And finally, I would like to pick up Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. From what I can gather, this book is a superhero book, but I believe it is actually an anti-superhero book where the men with powers are actually evil rulers. I'm very excited to read this. I've had it on my shelf for a few months, and I want to finally tackle it. Alright guys, so that was my July wrap up and a little bit of my August TBR. If you want, you can let me know down below what you're planning on reading this month and what your favorite books were of last month, and I will see you next time. Bye.